would you do that with your brother? Your own blood brother?
Adogo broke down in tears as she couldn't believe what her ears just heard. Masoma, her sister who was also disappointed in Nibblings, consoled her, but she wouldn't stop crying.
I will never forgive the both of you for the disgrace you've brought into this family. I don't want to ever see the both of you ever again in my life.
Adogo swore never to have anything to do with them again. Chikaima tried to beg her mother, but her mind was made up already. Obinna, who was also disappointed in his sister for not taking care of herself, mocked and cursed her. Adogo told the both of them to live peacefully, but they wouldn't, so she decided to call 2 hefty men to throw them out. Chikaima cried as she had nowhere to go. Obinna and Chikaima walked with their luggage with no destination in their mind. They decided to stay in an uncompleted building, hoping for a better place. Chikaima couldn't stop crying after realizing that her future was on the line. She couldn't imagine that she'll ever be in such situation. Obinna tried telling her to stop crying and punched her face when she didn't stop, which made her cry more. Ugochi was upset and disappointed when she heard what happened. The rumor soon circulated both in the village and her IT place. Everybody, including her boss, was really disappointed at them. Chikaima didn't know where to start from as she was always crying. Obinna will always go out in the night to go and steal as usual, and he'll spend all the money on drugs. He will not give Chikaima any money to cook, but will always beat her up anytime he comes back and didn't see food. Chikaima turned into Obinna's punching bag as he was also pouring all his aggression on her, saying she was the reason why he was now a laughingstock in the village. Chikaima will sometimes starve as she'd spent all her life savings in eating. She decided to go and look for a job, but nobody was willing to accept her. She started looking for menial jobs and would also get rejected and thrown out. Anybody who tries to give her a job would get discouraged by neighbors who knew about her story. She'll sometimes starve as there was no food for her to eat. She'll often cry after walking around in search of jobs but won't get any. She started going around begging for money and foodstuffs but get just very little from people, and some of them will laugh at her. She'll walk around in an empty stomach looking dirty and unkempt in search of food and money, and will sometimes eat from a pig's plate if she doesn't see any food. Few months later, the suffering and hardship became too much to the extent that she'll go days without eating. She couldn't even afford the money for antenatal, and Obinna never cared. She decided to use the little money she got from begging to start up an orange business to support herself a little. She was able to start up in a small space that she got but was sent out by the owner of the space. She decided to start hawking on her head. She'll sometimes carry the orange and walk around looking for buyers. As weeks and months passed, Chikaima became really black, ugly, and unattractive. The once beautiful young lady has suddenly turned into an ugly old woman. One day, Obinna told her to give him some money, but she told him she didn't have any money to give him. Obinna got mad, beat her up and threw her oranges away. Chikaima will only cry as she can't do anything to him. One day, Obinna came home with his friend. They beat Chikaima up because she refused to give them money. They harassed her, tore her clothes, took advantage of her and forcefully took all her money from her. The uncompleted building wasn't a safe place for Chikaima, especially in her situation. She'll often get harassed and taken advantage of by unknown men. One day, while she was alone at home, she suddenly started feeling uncomfortable and pains on her belly. She knew it was the baby coming out. The pain became so unbearable for her and she started crying. She cried, screamed and called for help, but nobody came to help her. In no time, the baby was out and it was a bouncing baby boy. She cried after realizing that nobody was by her side. It was just her alone. She put on a smile on her and decided to call him Chukuma. One day, Obinna went to steal in broad daylight, but it wasn't successful as usual. The owner of the property saw him and called for help. The villagers ran after him and he tried to escape but was caught. They put tire around his neck as they were set to burn him. Chikaima, who heard what was happening, ran out to save him, leaving her son behind. She knew Obinna has been mistreating her, but she won't just fold her hands and watch him die. He was still her brother after all. Before she got to the village square, they've already set her brother on fire. She broke down in tears and tried to save him, but was held by some women. She tried to break free from them to go save her brother, but was held by more women. She cried and screamed as she watched her brother struggle in the fire and being burnt to ashes. She walked back home tired and crying. She was now alone in this world with her son. Few months later, while she was hawking her oranges her son was sleeping that day, and she decided to quickly go make some money and come because she didn't want to carry him under the sun. While she was hawking the oranges, the black luxury shiny car stopped honking so loud and startling her. A lady came down from the car, balanced herself on the car and started staring at her. Chikaima bowed her head in shame when she realized that it was her younger sister Ugochi. She would have also been driving around in a luxury car if not for her foolishness.
Ah, look who we have here. It's so nice seeing you once again after all this while. I heard what happened to your husband. My condolences. How is your son, by the way? Why are you not with him? I mean, he's supposed to be with you under this hot sun. Well, I just want to remind you of how useless, stupid, and shameless you are.
Ugochi mocked and laughed at Chikaima before getting back into her car and driving away. Chikaima cried and went home straight. She'd never imagined one day that her younger sister will speak to her in a mannerless and disrespectful way. She got home, carried her son who was already awake, crying. She cried remembering all the misfortunes that had happened to her because of her son. She cursed and blamed him for coming into her life to ruin it. Few weeks later, she heard that her younger sister Ugochi was getting married, and she decided that it was the best way to make up with her mother and sister. She dressed up and went for the marriage ceremony. She went there leaving her son who was fast asleep behind. When she got there, there was a lot to eat and drink. Everybody was eating, drinking and dancing. Her sister Ugochi got mad when she saw her. She called for her mom, who quickly came and got more mad seeing her. She started shouting and embarrassing her. Chikaima quickly went on her knees begging her mother in tears.
You, this useless and shameless girl. Haven't I told you that I don't want to ever see you anywhere around my house? You thought I was joking when I told you that? If not for the fear of God, if not for the fear that I have for God, I would have caught some guys, I would have caught some boys to beat you up before throwing you out of this place. Now will you stand up and get out from my side before I lose my temper? Mommy, please. I'm sorry for all the disgrace I've brought to you. Please find a place in your heart to forgive me, Mom. I know I messed up, Mom, but please find a place in your heart to forgive me. I'm sorry for all the disgrace I've brought to you, Mom. Please forgive me.
Adogo didn't want to listen to Chikaima for one bit, as she was getting more disgusted and annoyed. She ordered some boys to drag and throw her out. While Chikaima was being dragged out, people laughed at her and mocked her. She cried bitterly on her way home. She was fed up with all that was going on in her life, and she was going to end it all. She carried her son when she got home and cried more.
Ever since the news of you came into an existence in my life, it has been one problem to the other. I've suffered, and you've suffered too. I'm sorry, Chikuma, but I have to end it all. I can't give you the life you deserve. I can't give you the life you want. I have to end it all myself. Please forgive me, my son. Forgive me, Chikuma. In your next life, choose a more responsible parent. I'm sorry, my son.
Chikaima brought out knife. In tears and anger, she stabbed her son multiple times, who cried and screamed in pain. She went ahead to stab herself multiple times as well. Both mother and son cried and bled. They groaned in pain and in a pool of blood. Nobody knew what was happening, and both mother and son bled to death. Few days later, an awful smell started circulating the village. Nobody knew where the smell was coming from. They tried to figure out what was smelling so bad, but they couldn't. The smell was so awful that they started wearing nose masks around. The smell became so unbearable and intense, and they decided to go and looking for what was causing such horrible smell by all means. They searched and searched and searched but didn't find anything. Four friends who decided to search together were searching the uncompleted buildings in the village. The smell became really bad as they approached a particular uncompleted building. When they got inside, there was flies all over the place and they were wondering what it was. Just then, they saw mother and son lying down lifeless on the ground with maggots coming out from their body as they were already decaying. Flies kept perching and buzzing all over the place. They were in deep shock and couldn't believe what they just saw. The deceased, which was mother and son, were wrapped and brought outside. People gathered the place.
How can a mother abandon her own daughter that she carried for 9 months? She deserved am, Jerry. When she was busy opening her leg for her brother, she didn't think of the consequences, abi. Anybody wey say he no go get sense, na like this he go end o. Him own go even bad pass these people own.
Hey, what kind of thing is this? How mama go kill herself, still kill her pikin join? Now wow.
Auma, more now no dey blame them again na. People wey don die, una still dey blame them.
People kept talking and murmuring all over the place. Some pitied while some threw blames. The village had sent out a message to Adogo, who was the mother of the deceased, telling her to come take her daughter and grandson's corpses to go and bury. Adogo broke down in tears after hearing what happened to Chikaima and her son. Ugochi heard what happened and quickly came to console her mother. She couldn't believe that she'd suddenly develop a great hatred for her daughter whom she once cherished. She had sworn not to ever forgive her no matter what the situation might be. She sent back a message to them telling them she had no business with the deceased. The villagers waited for hours waiting to see if Adogo will change her mind, but she didn't. They decided to take matters into their hands. Nobody volunteered to bring land for them to bury Chikaima and her son, so they decided to come up with another alternative. They wrapped mother and son together and 2 guys were sent to go and throw them in the river that was in the forest. They got to the river, threw them inside the river, and immediately the wave of the river took them to an untold place where mother and son rested in peace. Adogo couldn't stop crying after the death of Chikaima and her son. She suddenly came to realize how bad she had treated Chikaima and Obina. Her 2 children are gone because of her selfishness and wickedness. She'll cry day and night regretting all her actions. She cried and asked God for forgiveness. She lived with the regrets all through the days of her life.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to Hopela Stories.